Hello and welcome back to the MLB DFS Slate Breakdown for Monday, April 8th. It's Eclipse Day and we're here to get a takedown. All right, so what we will be doing is we'll be going over today's slate, but we will start off with going over yesterday's slate, the perfect lineup, the winning lineups, and then we'll jump into today's pitchers and stacks to consider. But before we get all into all of that stuff, we have a new page on the website. It is the Dinger Report. I want to bring this up. I brought it up on Friday, but just in case you are a LineStar sub and you haven't seen it yet, I want to make sure you do know about it. It is a new tool. It is called the MLB Dinger Report. It will be on app soon. Not quite there yet, but it is on the website now. And if you are not a sub, come join us. We are always adding tools just to help you be a little more profitable in prop betting, in DFS, in it all. And we are continuing to try and get better. We do have some more stuff coming out very soon. Now, let's get into the perfect lineup. So, perfect lineup on DraftKings. We had Dean Kremer and Joe Boyle as the pitchers that got it done. Look, they were cheap, and not many pitchers on that slate did very well. And they both did decently. So no surprise to see them in the perfect lineup. We do have a 3-man Milwaukee stack as well as a 2-man Yankee stack. Kind of got it done there. So good work there. And then on DraftKings, the winner was Short Gamer TV, who, only won by like 0.5 points. He didn't have either of the pitchers that were optimal. But he did have a 3-man Milwaukee stack, 5-man Milwaukee stack, 2-man Atlanta stack, and then Lane Thomas to round it out and got it done, just inching out TJ or TJ. So, congrats to Short Gamer. Now let's jump into the FanDuel lineup. Dean Kremer, and then we had a 2-man Miami stack, but one-offs outside of that. I do think it's interesting that more Milwaukee's players weren't in that. But, hey, Contreras got a ton of those points, so I'm not that surprised there. Now, as far as the winning lineup, it went to Aaron Costa. Sean Manaea was the pitcher. So, once again, not an optimal pitcher. Pitchers just didn't go nuts on this slate, so you didn't have to have one guy. There were multiple ones that could get it done. But then he had a 4-man Yankee stack and a 3-man Milwaukee stack that got it done with a one-off of Nolan Gorman, who just went nuts. 40.9. The team only put up 3 runs. He had all 3 RBIs. 2 of them were hitting himself in because he had 2 home runs. So congrats, Aaron Costa. Way to take it down. And now let's jump into today's slate. I think this is a bit of an interesting slate. There's a lot of different ways to go. And your highest owned pitchers are Yu Darvish, Miles Mikolas, and Jose Barrios. All right, so Yu Darvish has been pitching very, very well to start this season. 8.4K isn't very expensive for him. They are facing a pretty good offense in the Cubs, but this total is pretty low. One of the things I want to bring up right away, though, is pitch counts. 72, 78, and 82. Now, Darvish is a very efficient pitcher, so he could still work very deep into the game, but it is a little worrying that he's only going to low 80s pitch count. I would expect this one, maybe he's at high 80s instead of low 80s, but having him not go, or have the ability to go to 100 is a little bit concerning. Sometimes you get one rough inning and you can't go that deep into the game, and that's just going to hurt you so much more. So I do worry a little bit that he's high owned with a pitch count. So that is one thing that makes me want to come off you a little bit. But look, he's a decent pitcher. 24% K rate, combined K rate's 22%, has had a ton of success against his former team in the Cubs, and 30% K rate against these guys. So it is absolutely an interesting spot for him, and he's been pitching pretty well to start the season. And if we look what he's done the last couple of years, just had an amazing game versus him last year. In 2022 had a good one, solid in 2021, and he's at home. So I don't mind going to Darvish. I am a little worried about the pitch count. Miles Mikolas, at 5.3, I guess you can consider him on DraftKings, but I just don't think any ceiling is there. We do have him at 23.8% K rate, which is extremely surprising given the fact that he has a 15.7% K rate over his last 20 starts. He's in a decent spot, but it's really hard to find a lot of reasons to like him. Philadelphia has a 239 ISO versus righties, and Mikolas giving up hard contact, giving up a lot of line drives, decent amount of fly balls. I think it's a little scary to go there, especially at higher ownership. Jose Barrios versus the Mariners, who haven't been great versus anybody yet. So I don't mind going back and picking on them with Barrios. He is pretty cheap, has a decent K rate of 25%, 27.7% combined K rate is very intriguing, and 47 plate attempts, striking out at 32%. It's probably why this K rate's a little bit higher than you would have expected, but he's been good so far. 33 batted balls, ton of ground balls. A little alarming how many barreled balls and hard contact there's been, but all in all, he's been good, and I'm fine taking some swings. Now, this Mariners offense can hit the ball hard, so when they do hit the ball hard, you're going to hope that there's not many people on base, because that's going to make or break your night with him. Now, Zach Gallen, this is a Colorado game. Very surprising to see a pitcher this high owned in Colorado, but it is Gallen. Very, very good pitcher. And the other thing here is when you click the matchup for Colorado, his best games versus Colorado have pretty much all been in Colorado. So it appears that it doesn't matter too much for him if he is in Colorado or in Arizona. I don't mind going to some Gallen. I think it's a little sneaky. I think that we have him at 18% right now. I think that'll be lower. And I'm a little bit intrigued by Gallen. If, this ownership starts dropping and he looks like a low-owned option at only 8.2K, I think it's kind of interesting versus a team that's just not very good in the Rockies. Next, we got Blake Snell. Look, he's a very, very good pitcher with a huge upside, but he is probably going to be a little limited. I know he has pitched some simulated games, but he hasn't done a real game. Didn't have a spring training. I know he was working hard during spring training, but just not quite the same when you are working by yourself versus working with a team. So I do worry about him being limited, but he could absolutely shred this Nationals team. The one thing we do have to worry about is his command. He is a guy that can let a lot of guys on base, and he's not good at keeping them to first base, as a lot of guys get steals against him. So I think there are some things to worry about Blake Snell in his first spot, but it is in a very good spot. If there's any news that comes out that, he doesn't have a pitch limit, I think it makes this spot just way more interesting, especially if people aren't going there. Charlie Morton, I don't love it. He hasn't been very... Oh, sorry. That was Freed that hasn't been very good. Morton, was decent last time out. Don't mind going there. It is versus the Mets. But really high game total. One of the better weather situations for the day. And in a good hitting park. I don't mind if you get some, but I think his price is just a bit too high there. I think it's really interesting what Minnesota is doing with their lineup. They have all righties, even though Paxton is actually worse versus lefties. But the Twins just play the platoon situation so hard, and they're leaning into it again. I think you can go to Paxton. I don't absolutely love it just because Minnesota's not striking out a bunch, and they have, a decent hitting team. But you could do worse than going to Paxton at least. Now, has Luis Castillo, look, you're getting a cheaper Luis Castillo than he should be, and we know he is a stud pitcher, and it looks like his pitch limit, we're not worried about him only pitching 80 pitches. He can go up to 100. Toronto is very good, but versus righties, only 140 ISO. I think there is a chance we can pick on Toronto a little bit here with Castillo in a spot where he has, as big of a ceiling as pretty much anybody on this slate, and he is a very, very good pitcher. So I don't mind going there. Framber Valdez, I don't love the spot for him. His price is down, so I get it. Eflin is kind of a meh for me as well. And, there's really not anybody down here that I'm too interested in probably sticking up a little bit. Now, going into FanDuel, I realize we talked way more pitchers than we have been, but just feel like we can go a little bit deeper now with NBA not going right now. All right. So Yu Darvish, 22% owned. He is at the very top. He is priced fine. Charlie Morton, same price here, 13%. Very surprised to see Morton being the second highest owned. And then Eflin is here at 8,811% owned. Now, I want to talk about Eflin a little bit more. Look, Angels do K a lot versus righties, but he's not a big-time strikeout pitcher. He does have a 25% K rate, so it's not bad. But the Angels hit righties fairly hard. 175 ISO. It's a pitcher. We do have a pitcher-friendly park, but my worry with Eflin is he just hasn't been that good yet. His ERA and FIP are both in the 5s so far this season. He made it deep versus Texas, but got crushed versus Toronto. I just don't totally know who we're seeing yet this year. Don't mind going here. I just don't love that he's a little bit higher owned. I think there's other guys I will want to go to, like Gallen or Castillo, that don't have some of that ownership. I think Yu is definitely one of the main guys I will be targeting on this slate. And Barrios is a bit too expensive for me on FanDuel. All right, let's get into some stacks here. And we will go to those DraftKings stats. Once again, I do it on DraftKings because there's 5 players. It's just a little more information as far as the projections, the ownership, all of that. So that's why I'm doing it DraftKings. If you guys want me to go through this on FanDuel, leave some comments. I will do it as well. But if we do that, just know that it's going to be a lot of the same stuff over and over and over again. So, highest owned stack, we got Arizona. No surprise. It is in Colorado. Another thing with this Arizona spot is that Colorado has over a 7 ERA for both their starters and their bullpen. There's no team close that has been that bad pitching wise. Everybody else is either or is pretty much bad at either bullpen or starters. They're not terrible at both, and it appears so far Colorado is that. You add in also that it's in Arizona or in Colorado, and it makes a lot more sense to want to use these Arizona stacks. Now, the weather-wise, it is a little bit cool in Colorado, so the ball won't travel quite as well, but still very much interested in Arizona stacks. Kyle Freeland just hasn't been good. 6.12 FIP over his last 20. Not any better in the short term. The splits are in the favor of Arizona. Arizona's a good offense. Don't mind going there whatsoever. Tampa Bay, I'm always willing to pick on some Tampa Bay. Their ownership usually doesn't get this high, though, and that's part of the reason why I enjoy going there, is because they're usually a little bit lower owned. But this is a very good spot for them. And I don't mind going there versus Tyler Anderson, who has a 6.21 FIP over his last 5 starts. However, that's a 4.37 over the last 20. So Anderson hasn't been great lately, but it's also a spot that he's only had like 1 start this year, maybe 2. So I don't love picking on Tyler Anderson in a higher owned Tampa Bay spot, but I do like that offense. Don't mind taking some swings. And, you know, that is what it is. All right, now next we got Houston versus Heaney. Don't mind taking some swings here as well. He can get hit around. However, he also has days where he's a very, very good pitcher. So I don't mind playing a little bit of both sides on that game. Atlanta, I am just shocked they aren't higher owned, likely because everybody is so priced up. But I love this spot versus Atlanta. Julio Teheran just straight up has not been good for years now. I don't expect him to be good now either. I mean, he didn't even get signed until like a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, something like that. So I don't think teams believe in him, and I think Atlanta will just torch him once again. All right, so highest projected stacks, we got Atlanta. I like this spot. Surprised that ownership isn't more there. Arizona, we talked about. Dodgers. Bailey Ober is just kind of a whatever pitcher. Don't mind trying to pick on them. I mean, we've seen game in and game out, or slate in, slate out, that somebody on the Dodgers ends up optimal more often than not. So I think it is something you at least have to consider. A minor stack, small stack, maybe not a full stack, but Dodgers are in a fine spot. Houston, Texas versus Valdez. I don't love picking on Valdez. He doesn't really get crushed often, but I don't mind a couple. And let's get over to the value spot. So Angels, top of the value. Like we said, Eflin hasn't been very good. Tampa Bay is up there on the value. Don't mind picking on them a little bit, especially with more of a back end of their lineup stack. These guys can hit, and Ahmed Rosario has some very interesting underlying numbers to start the season. He's only 3,400, and if he's in the lineup, I think it's pretty interesting for this back end. Don't mind that. Washington versus Blake Snell. I don't mind this one either. Look, Blake Snell lets a ton of guys on base. He lets stolen bases happen, and it only takes 1-2 timely hits to get to Blake Snell. Yes, those hits are hard to get, but he can get got. And being his first game back, I wouldn't be that shocked if it was today. And nobody's going there, so that's a interesting kind of leverage stack there. And Mets, don't mind picking on Charlie Morton pretty much ever. Highest ceiling, no surprise, Atlanta, Dodgers, Philadelphia versus Mikolas. All makes sense there, so don't mind any of those. Highest leverage stack, Angels. And let's go to the FIP. This is the one that I really wanted to bring up because absolutely nobody's going there. Pick on Trevor Williams. 6.19 FIP. Over the last 5, 6.7 FIP. This Giants team has been hitting. I don't mind some Giant stacks. They're super low owned. I absolutely will have some. Not going to go overboard with them, but I do think they're extremely interesting. And right underneath that, FIP-wise, Arizona. Can pick on Colorado, obviously, and Atlanta. So I think it's a fairly interesting slate, all things consider. The one last thing I want to touch on is we are starting to actually get some more data that matters. Bullpen numbers. So far, Tampa Bay, Colorado, and Houston, and the Angels have had the worst bullpens. So, if Arizona is getting to Freeland quick, it doesn't get any better. If Washington gets the Blake Snell, San Francisco hasn't been good out of the pen either. So I think that's just some added information to figure out what stacks you want to play. Good luck, guys. We will be back tomorrow, and hopefully one of you guys gets a takedown today. Adios. Peace.